everyone, I'm Adrian from WebBar, and we have the first episode of the WebBar Talk today, where we want to bridge gaps in the software development area, especially for small to large companies, for junior to senior developers, and just help people getting a better overview about what's up in our industry and what's not. Today we have our first guest, which is Nicholas Ocket, and he is a coach in the web development area. And we met on LinkedIn several months ago. And now we decided to have a conversation about programming principles and how you can find the best way into using those. And yeah, welcome, Nicholas.
Hi, Adrian. Thank you for having me. I'm actually really excited.
I'm happy to have you here. So what are you doing exactly?
Well, currently I'm still employed, so I still have a full-time job. And I'm an R&D IoT engineer, so that's a mouthful actually. But what that means is I work for a telematics company, right? So we put devices in big machines for fleet management, and so it's a very versatile job. We do research, we look into different solutions, different electronical solutions. We code proof of concepts, we code tools in different languages. So that's what I'm doing right now, and it's actually pretty neat. And after hours, right, I have my own project which is about coding, where I try to coach people into the software business.
And how did you become a coach for programmers then? So what was your intention? What was the motivation for that?
Well, it's actually something that I've always wanted to do. So during my career, I've been a software programmer for about 14 years. And so during my career, I found it neat and cool to help people get started, right? Talking about interns and whatnot. There haven't been that many interns, but I always enjoyed helping them, getting them up to speed. And so during COVID, where everybody was working from home and nobody was actually doing anything else that was interesting, I actually came across a woman on LinkedIn, and she was looking for personal coaching. So she just had finished a boot camp, and she would start her new job in I think in 2 months, and she felt like she didn't know enough yet. And so she was wondering if there was somebody out there who could help her. And I was thinking like, okay, I mean, why not? I still have my full-time job, but I've always wanted to do this, so why not? And so for about 1 month and a half, every evening after hours, we sat together, set up a Zoom call. And so, I coached her. I set up a learning plan, discussed it with her. So I asked what you want to learn, where you want to be. And we managed to do it. And she was very happy. I was very happy. I really felt like I helped somebody, right? Mm-hmm. And that felt really nice. And so I was thinking, hey, maybe I should be doing more of this. And after her, there were a couple more people that wanted some help. And so I coached them. And then I was thinking, this one-on-one coaching is it's really nice, but there's only so many people you can help out. Mm-hmm. And I was already working on a course, and so I started promoting my course on design principles a bit more. But that's actually how I got into coaching. It's the idea that I want to help people getting to software development and making their next steps in their career.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a great thing. And what's another great side effect is the more you teach, the more you learn. So actually the best way to learn is to teach. And this makes you the more valuable for in the future for new coming students for you, for example. And this is just a great thing. So you mentioned boot camps before we really get into the questions. You mentioned boot camps. I I see them lately. So we even had we even recruited someone of a boot camp. So what is your view on the graduates from boot camps in these days? So and just in comparison with a traditional junior coming from some kind of CS degree or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I came from the traditional educational path, and so honestly, when you come from school as a software developer, you know how to code, you know how to type in a certain language,
Hmm.
and that's basically it. Maybe you had some extras like database management and some theory on, for example, transactions and whatnot. You know, the theoretical stuff that's valuable as a software developer, which you maybe not have in a boot camp.
Hmm.
However, on the other hand, I've lately been reviewing code from people who come from a boot camp.
Oh.
Yeah, on LinkedIn, I just pick them out, pick out the interesting ones, and just ask if they're interested in a review. And I must say, how should I put it? Very, very positive about what people learn in boot camps. Um, I admire what they can already do, right? It goes beyond the simple CRUD applications. They know so much. And so my take on boot camps is, I mean, if you're considering a career in software development, I would definitely do a boot camp. I'm 38 years right now.
Hmm.
Supposedly that I was a teacher or something else, and I wanted to do software development. I wouldn't go for traditional. I would go for a boot camp.
Hmm. So this is what I can say to that as well. So our developer was very practical. We could just basically use him from day one on. Onboarding was very easy. Um, on some point, it lacked in those theory things, like those principles and what we want to talk about today. Let's say design architecture. Those things were basically something they don't know about, or it seems that they don't know about that. But especially on the practical part, where you expect juniors to be anyway, they are already pretty good. So let's say in my experience in the companies I work with, is the architectural part something which the seniors do anyway. So I think I think it's a good point, and I think people should give more credibility and chances to graduates from boot camps. This is what I can say to that. But yeah, I'll try to get someone on this podcast in the future as well to interview how it is with boot camps these days. So thank you very much for your insights about that. And let's go to the questions. So we want to talk about programming principles today. What are those programming principles?
That's a good question, actually. So, what they are, there's some very, very common principles that if you're in software development, you must have heard of them. For example, solid, right? Dry. Yagni is also one that's very popular. Dry, for example, stands for don't repeat yourself. Yagni is you ain't gonna need it. These are things that you've definitely heard about. Other ones are like grasp, which is less popular. Separation of concerns. These are all principles. I just spitfiring some. But what they are basically is just best practices and lessons learned from developers over time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
mankind is developing software for a few decades now, right? We're 2020. I think they've been producing software since 1950 or 60s or something like that. And so what's astonishing is that at that time they had the same problems as we have today. For example,
Right.
low productivity, damage caused by low quality software and bugs. Yes, stuff like that. And so what happened is, I think there's even a very, very well-known case where they had medical software and people actually died because of bugs in there. I think that was a case in the United States. And so when you see all of these problems in a new field that's emerging, I think people just said, we can do better. And so over time, I think people just saw that certain situations led to code that was faulty or that was going to be time consuming or very high cost in maintaining or actually producing more bugs. And so I think over time they saw these situations, they saw the patterns happening in it, and they realized that if this is happening, this is the best way of responding to that. And then over time they said maybe instead of responding, we should, prevent it from happening. And that's how software design principles came to be, at least into my understanding. There were fewer developers in that time, and so they sat together more and they were like, we have this problem, how are we going to solve this? And there's famous people, mathematicians and great thinkers that came up with these principles. And what's really cool also is that they started very low. Like, what is the core, the absolute core that we should understand before we can move on to some higher level principles? And so it's been very interesting to see that evolve as well, actually. So I would say, if you ask me what are design principles, they are best practices and tools emerging over time to make your software more maintainable, less bug prone, and more cost efficient.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned evolvement and enhancement. So when we think of modern web development or software development in general, it's evolving even faster every month. So you can really see how the pace is faster, or basically faster every day. How does this affect? So let's say when we need to deliver things faster, we need to learn more. How does it affect the outcome of a product? Let's say in terms of what can happen if we ignore those principles, as for example a junior developer, we ignore those principles in this fast-paced world today. What can happen?
Yeah, actually it always comes down to the same thing. Somebody is going to lose a huge amount of time and thus a huge amount of money. And usually that's going to be the company you work for, right? So what happens is, if you ignore these principles, your code base becomes harder and harder to maintain. It becomes harder and harder to change things. And so a side effect of that is that more bugs are probably going to pop up, right? You make your code more error prone. And so since it takes longer and longer to develop new features, that costs money. Developers cost money, right? Nobody programs for free. Well, except of course your pet project. but professionally, you don't code for free. So that costs money. Also, fixing and finding the origins of these bugs costs more and more time. They get more and more complex, which again costs money. Mm-hmm. And so that's the company side of it. But then you have the user base or the customer base of the product that you're developing. These people also have a business, right? And in some cases, the software that you're developing or that a company is developing is supposed to help them in their business. So people are relying on that. And while their businesses grow, their needs change. And so they're going to want new features. But if it takes very long to add new features to your software, to your code base, I mean, customers and users are gonna become impatient. They're gonna maybe look at somewhere else. They're gonna say, hey, this other company who provides the same services, it looks like they can do it faster and better. So why not try them? And then there's the developer side. Junior people might not yet have experienced the pain and the frustration of working in a code base that's hard to understand, especially when there's pressure, right? And there's always going to be pressure. And so that's what's going to happen. Your code base is going to degrade. It's going to take more and more time to change it. and people are going to get angry, and there's going to be more pressure, and it will result in losing time and losing money.
And this is when the management needs to explain why this technical debt is keep rising and rising. And of course, you don't see those problems in the first place. You see them most of the times later on, especially when, for example, a project takes several months. Then most likely in the last month you see the problems. When you see, okay, it takes several months more to fix them. And actually, this is a great problem. I think every software developer faced such a situation already. And it is always about best practices to avoid those and learn those things. And this is, I think, a nice wrap up for principles or best practices to use, but we stick to the principles now. How hard is it to actually learn those things? For example, we talked about people coming from a boot camp. We talk about juniors or maybe seniors who are coming into the programming principles a little later in their career. How hard is it to learn those and master those?
I would say, well, it depends. It depends. If you're on your own, it's pretty hard to learn them, and that's because software design, I think, has one big problem, and that's you need a certain level of complexity to appreciate what software design can do for you, right? And so what happens? These principles, they are abstractions. You cannot give too many details on how to use them, because the context in which to use them is always going to be different. And so people try to explain these principles with simple examples, but inevitably you're going to get the question by the person who is learning them: why would we ever need this? I cannot see the benefit of doing this in this simple example. And so it's hard to come up with more complex examples, right? Because you have to explain the situation, you have to explain the context, and it takes time. And so not many people do that. So learning these just because of that is already making it hard. Then on the other hand, on the other side, because these principles are abstractions, at least that's my opinion, right? They are usually quite vague, and I mean, the most vague principle out there is probably the single responsibility principle, right? I think there's, for every person that is going to cite the principle and saying what it is about, you're going to have a different version of the principle. And if you're a beginner, and you hear these principles, they're just not going to make sense. Unless you have a mentor or a coach right by you, right? Somebody who has experience, somebody who has, insights in how code is going to change and evolve. And if you have somebody like that mentoring you, that's a different story. It's still going to be hard, but you constantly have somebody next to you who's going to say, okay, we're going to take this decision because of this and this reason. And if he's really good, he's also going to say, it's this and this concept that's behind this. This is why we should take this decision right now. And so I've seen people coming from boot camps, by the way, which it was somebody that I hired. He only, quote unquote, had 3 years of experience, but he had those years of experience with a very knowledgeable architect who mentored him. And so we did code interviews, or I took the technical interviews. I think we saw 50 or 60 candidates pass by with different levels and different years of experience. Some of them had 20 years of experience, but they could not tell me how they were going to build decent software. And then this person comes by with, it was a senior role. He was applying for a senior role with only 3 years of experience, and we were like, okay, it takes some guts to do that. And yeah, but he sat there and he just explained to me how you're going to create decent software, and I was like, wow, that's really neat. And so I asked him, how come you know so much and you have this kind of insight already? And he said, yeah, it's because of my mentor. So in general, I would say yes, they are hard to understand and to learn because they're vague. It takes some complexity to appreciate what software design really is and why you would need it. But if you have somebody coaching you or mentoring you, you can just skyrocket. I mean, you can just buy yourself time. That's basically it, and learning them.
I think you need to work in a team anyway to learn those principles well, because you need to understand that you write your code for other people. So you don't write the code for yourself. So you are just a creator for something bigger, with other people inside there. So you mentioned experience. I agree. I think it takes experience, or the experience from another person, who's the person mentoring you, to actually get an idea what these principles mean in terms of application in the real world. And I think what I would add is team culture. So I write and talk a lot about team culture and mindset. And I think you need to be willing to understand those, because when you have some kind of inner resistance against those things, because you think it makes you slower and you have a bad work-life balance because of that, so you skip those things to be faster at home or something like that, you will not learn it and you will not understand it and you will not become a successful programmer, or maybe, let's say, a respected programmer in a team, which is then the foundation for a team culture, to have like-minded people in a group who are all willing to learn, willing to understand, and willing to learn new things and adapt those things in a team to be, as a team, better in what you do.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Also, what also doesn't really help, in my opinion, it's dual. We have internet now, we have YouTube, and so there's a huge amount of information out there. On the other hand, there's also a huge amount of people who see the opportunity to showcase their knowledge, right? And so what happens is, or what I have seen often, is that you have people sharing information about these design principles without really explaining them. And this also, if you're new and you're trying to learn on your own, it just makes it harder, because there's no, I don't know how to put it. There's no insights, there's just information. People tell you how your code should look like in the end when you're done, but not how to actually get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is information that you can get from either good courses or a mentor or a coach or your team members.
It is to shortcut the journey to become a successful programmer and a successful team. So this can be applied to a single developer because he wants to get better, or this applies to a manager or a CTO or a VP of engineering or whoever who wants to have a good team. So they should push the people inside their teams to learn those things. And I think coaches or consultants are a good way to go, because these people or these coaches always, bring those, they already learned those things. They know why those things are necessary to actually respect and implement them. And this is why I would go with the approach as well. So I think this is a good way to go. I have to add that in the first decade of my career, I wasn't too much about that. So I did a lot on my own. And the problem there is just it takes too long, and you come to in my opinion, you come to the conclusions of those principles on yourself, by yourself. You can do that, but it's way more efficient to do that in a like-minded team with some kind of mentoring. Maybe it's the senior developer in the team, the principal, or just a coach from outside who's just helping the team from time to time, getting an idea of where they want to develop to. So thank you. I think regarding the time, we're coming to an end, but we talked a lot about why you should implement these things and what happens if you don't do that. How is it with how can people reach out to you so that you can help them? So what are you offering? How can people contact you? And what would be the next steps if they like to step up in the game of principles?
All right, cool. I would say that they should reach out to me on LinkedIn. For now, it's my preferred way of getting in contact with people. And then they should well give me a message, give me a PM, and what I'm going to do is ask what it is that you want, right? What is your level? Are you really a junior? Do you come from a code camp? Do you have some experience already? I also have my course. I already mentioned it. I have a course on software design. It's built for people who start in the business and who want to learn about software design. So I hammer on the fundamental concepts because I see a big knowledge gap in there. So you can go to my website, which is www.aboutcoding.be, where you will find more information about the course. But you could just also ask me. Either way is fine, actually. This is what I offer now. So I offer reviewing of your code. Then we sit together for maybe half an hour, and I give some pointers as especially design-wise, as how you can improve your structure of your code. Maybe you should look into this, maybe you should look into that. If you have questions, you can always come to me again and ask your questions. This is what I do now. In the future, actually in the near future, what I would like to do as part of having a wider range of people to coach and to mentor is doing these design dojos where we have a problem case, we sit together for 2 to 3 hours, and we just come up with a design together during that time, in which I will explain the decisions that I would take. I would listen to all of you and adjust and coach you in coming to a good solution. But for now, LinkedIn and my website would be your best bets.
Thank you. This design dojo sounds interesting. Okay, great. So don't try to figure out those things yourself. If you're in a professional area, in a professional sector, you need to be able to do this. So always think about the quality and how you can add value to your team. And this is by learning. Always learn. Become an eternal learner. And make the first step. Get a mentor. This is always a good point to start. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show today. And have a nice day and a successful week.